Welcome to the Arlington Street Church podcast. Founded in 1729, Arlington Street continues today as a gathering place for progressive people of faith in the greater Boston area and beyond. We are located at the corner of Arlington and Boylston Streets, across from the Public Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. Please visit ascboston.org for more information about this historic Unitarian Universalist congregation. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.
It's hard to describe to my friends who live at a distance, who have never been here before, just what it is that we've created here together. This force field of caring, comfort, connection, contribution. Some of them showed up for the gala last weekend and they can't stop talking about it. One said, "I was completely overcome with the feeling of this empty space of longing deep within me, filling up. I felt teary. It was like coming home, but for the first time." See what you do to people? I'm going to try to get my arms around this today. Let's talk about belonging. That feeling of being accepted, included, respected, and contributing. In 1943, over 80 years ago, American psychologist Abraham Maslow published his groundbreaking theory of human motivation, mapping the basic needs and higher aspirations of human beings and reshaping education, psychology, social work, and management. One of Dr. Maslow's fundamental idea was the importance of belonging, the human need for connection and acceptance. He placed it in a prime position in his hierarchy right after the needs for food, clothing, shelter, and physical safety, naming belonging as crucial for our physical and mental health. Kim Samuel is the author of On Belonging, Finding Connection in an Age of Isolation. She writes, humanity is at an inflection point. Stress, disconnection, and environmental degradation have us yearning for more than material progress, personal freedom, or political stability. We are searching for deeper connection. We are longing to belong. She tells this story. 2 decades ago, I got to attend a dinner in New York City held in honor of Nelson Mandela and his wife, Mozambican politician and humanitarian Graça Machel. It was my first time meeting Mandela, and I naturally felt both joy and jitters. I had met Graça before. Despite her accomplishments and fame, I felt an intimate connection with her. When I arrived, she greeted me warmly and asked me how I had been since my father's death. I told her how the worst heartache hadn't been my father's disability, but the isolation that accompanied his struggle. Mandela, who had spent 27 years in prison with long periods in solitary confinement, listened quietly as I shared these reflections. I turned to him and said, "Of course, you know all about isolation." He paused to think and then answered solemnly, "No, I have never been isolated." "Not even on Robben Island?" I asked, referring to the notorious prison camp on a rock in the Indian Ocean where he was interned for 18 of those 27 years. "No," he replied. On Robben Island, we were all brothers, working together with a common purpose. I was never alone. Mandela continued, "I have seen isolation. I have seen it in the child with AIDS, whom no one in the village will touch or feed or shelter or care for or love. I have seen isolation, and it is very bad. Here was a man who had survived staying connected with his community through a shared sense of purpose, each day understanding their personal struggles as a microcosm of their wider struggle. He and his brothers served the cause of their people's freedom. They built a powerful sense of solidarity and belonging that endured the harsh conditions of prison. Nelson Mandela never lost sight of the love of his homeland, the wisdom transmitted to him from his elders, or the traditions that gave him a strong sense of his place in the world. He drew from these foundations as he developed a sense of how to conserve and replenish his beliefs and emerge from prison undiminished. And his deeply compassionate reflection on the isolation of the child with AIDS reveals a profound understanding of the importance of belonging. Many of us know and love the work of Brené Brown. She began her career as a grounded theory researcher, employing a research method based on data that have been systematically collected and analyzed to generate a theory. Her subject was shame and vulnerability, but she writes, you cannot study the emotions and experiences that define what it means to be human without constantly bumping into belonging. It is just too primal. 2 insights. A lack of belonging is a stronger indicator for depression than loneliness or a lack of social support. We crave connection in the same region of the brain that we crave food. And we experience social exclusion in the same part of the brain that we experience physical pain. Brené Brown writes, love and belonging are irreducible needs for all people. In the absence of love and belonging, there is always suffering. Her book, Braving the Wilderness, explores what it means to belong in a divisive and disconnected world. Her conclusion is very powerful. She writes, we have to belong to ourselves as much as we need to belong to others. Any belonging that asks us to betray ourselves is not true belonging. True belonging, she says, is the spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of something and standing alone. The deeper our sense of belonging, the stronger our sense of freedom to express our individuality without fear of jeopardizing our belonging. True belonging is not fitting in. True belonging is a practice that requires us to be vulnerable, to get uncomfortable, and to learn how to be present with people without sacrificing who we are. True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. Jen Pavich, creator of the website kindovermatter.com, began her spiritual journey always feeling like an outsider. I could blend into any crowd and make friends quickly, she says, but there was a point that no one got past, not even the people to whom I was the closest. I'd always been the odd one in every herd I'd run with, she continues. When I was a kid, it may have come from relocating often and being the new girl, the one from somewhere else. As an adult, aspects of my life always made me feel different. Not shunned or not included necessarily, but just different, other. I was the only new student in my senior class in high school. I was the only woman in my unit in a U.S. Army Field Artillery Brigade. As a 22-year-old undergrad at University of Michigan, most of the people in my classes seemed like kids to me. I felt ancient. And I was the youngest parent at my 3-year-old's preschool, trying to prove how mature and capable I was. By my early 30s, I'd come to accept that I was some kind of extroverted loner. The stories I told myself about why I had that feeling of being set apart might have had some truth, but not the whole truth. After I'd begun doing some personal growth work, she says, I began to realize that our sense of belonging comes from within. And here, Jen Pavich echoes Brené Brown. Fitting in and belonging, she says, are two very different things. What I was doing all those years was fitting in, assimilating and hiding pieces of myself in order to please other people. I learned to shove anything that felt too intense or scary as deep down or as far away as I could. That left pieces of me, important parts of who I am and how I feel, buried so deep that they were hard for me to get at myself, let alone allow anyone to see them. Hiding allowed me to fit in, but it left me feeling like I didn't belong, even when I was with other people I cared about. I still have days when I feel the urge to dance to the beat of someone else's drum, the pressure to be or do or say something that I know just isn't me, just to feel like I fit in. But now I know that making that choice is likely to leave me feeling flat, which makes choosing courage a little bit easier. Now I know that belonging is allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to let people see you for who you really are. This doesn't mean we have to wear our darkest secrets on our sleeves for everyone to see. It just means that to truly feel a sense of belonging, we need to be fully ourselves and let ourselves be seen that way. In doing anti-racism work, especially when working to build fair and equitable workplaces, we used to focus on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then we added a critical letter. DEI, B is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Rebecca Bastian, a vice president of culture and community at Zillow, says, we learned that it's not enough to simply include people at the table. We need to amplify everyone's unique and genuine voices and appreciate each other for our unique backgrounds. Jonathan Haidt, author of The Happiness Hypothesis, calls this vital engagement. So how do we do it? How do we cultivate this sense of belonging for others and for ourselves? Here's a story. Like many of you, one night in November of 2016, I went to bed in the greatest democracy in the world. The next morning, I woke up in a country I didn't recognize and where I was not at all assured that I was welcome or belonged. I had no idea how it had happened, but I wanted to be part of undoing it. I made a decision to take up a new spiritual practice, and I've continued it to this day. It's just this. In any new situation, I seek out the person or people who appear to be least like me and strike up a conversation with them. My goal is to be curious and attentive, ask questions, share generously, look for points of connection, practice acceptance, and focus on our similarities rather than our differences. It isn't always great, but sometimes it's amazing. Once I was waiting to get my car inspected at a service station on Cape Cod and honed in on an old couple dressed in really ragged clothes driving a bald-tired junker. They regaled me with stories about farming oysters for a living. The line was long, and eventually, to my astonishment, they told me they had received an unexpected inheritance and built a new house abutting the national seashore. It had a beautiful separate apartment, but they didn't know how they were going to figure out whom they could trust to live there. Might I know someone? So on the spot, I called my Jamaican friends, a couple who over many years have moved in and out of several seasonal rentals twice a year. Within a month, they were all tucked in together. And what a joy. Clive cooks, and the four of them eat dinner together. This spiritual practice has connected me with people whose paths I never would have crossed. With each encounter, the country feels a little less populated by strangers. Again, you have to be you to make room for true connection. When I speak from my heart, my sense of belonging expands. In the beginning and in the end, the price of belonging is to be curious and open, to extend an invitation or say yes to an invitation just outside our comfort zone, to show up with our whole selves. I love the moment when someone I'm getting to know says, "Can I ask you something?" I commend you to it. Beloved spiritual companions, as human beings, we are longing to belong. True belonging doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. We have to belong to ourselves as much as we need to belong to others. May we be curious and open, say yes, and show up with our whole selves. You belong here and here. Amen. And now for our benediction, I invite you to put your hands over your hearts in Namaste. I bow to the divine in you. From American poet Adrienne Rich. It isn't that to have an honorable relationship with you, I have to understand everything or tell you everything at once, or that I can know beforehand everything I need to tell you. It means that most of the time I am eager, longing for the possibility of telling you, that these possibilities may seem frightening but not destructive to me, that I feel strong enough to hear your tentative and groping words, that we both know, we all know, that we are trying all the time to extend the possibilities of truth among us, the possibilities of belonging. Let us keep this faith, beloveds, and pass it on. The service begins when the service ends. Bless your hearts. I love you. Amen.
Please visit ascboston.org for more information about this historic Unitarian Universalist congregation. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.